Hello. Today we are going to be talking about topic 11, circles. There are a few definitions that we should go over first. The first is the definition of a radius. A radius of a circle is going to be a segment that has one endpoint on the center of the circle and one endpoint on the exterior of the circle, or the circumference, if you will. So this is what a radius would look like. It's from the center out to the side. The next definition is a diameter. It's a segment that has both endpoints on the circle. So this would be what a diameter would look like, from one endpoint of the circle to the next endpoint of the circle. Fully across, crosses the center of the circle. The next definition is going to be of a circumference. That's the distance around the circle. So if you look at this flower pot, I've put tape on the exterior of the circle. This is the circumference of the circle, the distance around. Remember, distance can never be negative. Area is the number of square units that fit inside the circle. So all of this tape would represent the area of the circle of the bottom of this flower pot. Everything would be completely covered. The last definition we should talk about is pi. We're going to start seeing pi, and it looks like this. Pi is just an approximation. It is an irrational number that represents the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. So we're going to talk a little bit more about pi when we start using some formulas. But before we get into that, let's talk about radius and diameter. So if we have a circle that has a radius of 8 inches, remember that the radius goes from the center of the circle to the outside. So if we knew that the radius was 8 inches, we would be able to find the diameter by multiplying the radius times 2, because there are two segments here that would make up the full diameter. So if the radius is 8 inches here, then the diameter would be 8 times 2, or 16 inches. And remember, it must cross the center of the circle. So I'm just going to write that r is equal to 8 inches and diameter would be equal to 16 inches. So diameter is equal to twice the radius. Now on the other hand, if we had a diameter of 20 inches, then the diameter would be half of a radius. So we would take the diameter and divide it by 2. So if this was 20 inches, then the diameter would be half of that, or the radius would be half of that, or 10 inches. Now, sometimes you're going to see that the diameter is an expression. This diameter is equal to 4x minus 6. Now, they're telling us that the radius is equal to 9 inches. So that means that I know that this part is going to be 9 inches. So if I know that the radius is 9 inches, what would the diameter be equal to? Well, the diameter would be twice the radius. If the radius is 9, then we know the diameter would be 2 times 9, or 18 inches. And now that we know that this whole thing is 18 inches, we can set an equation. We could create an equation by setting the diameter, 18 inches, equal to 4x minus 6. That's the expression that they gave us to represent the diameter. Now, this is going to be an equation we want to solve. We ask ourselves what is happening to the variable. This variable is being multiplied by 4, and it's being subtracted by 6. So we have to get rid of this 6 first by adding 6 to both sides. If we add 6 to 18, I'm going to come up here because I didn't give myself enough room. This would be 24 is equal to 4x now. And what is happening to the x? The x is being multiplied by 4. We must do the opposite and divide both sides by 4. That would leave us with x is equal to 6. So if they are able to give you the diameter in an expression and the radius, we can use the radius to figure out the actual diameter and then set the diameter equal to the expression of the diameter. That will help us solve for the variable x. Next up, we're going to talk about the circumference. There are two formulas we can use to find the circumference of a circle. One is circumference is equal to pi times diameter, and the next is circumference is equal to 2 times pi times the radius. So what happens when we multiply the radius by 2? We get the diameter. So they've given you two different formulas here. So if you're given the radius or if you're given the diameter, you can use which equation you would like. So if in the first example, if radius is equal to 8.2 meters, what is the circumference? So remember, when we're talking about circumference, we're looking for all the distance around the circle. So we can use our formula. Circumference is equal to pi times d. This is a good time to talk about pi. Pi has approximations of 3.14, or if you want to use it as a fraction, 22/7. Now pi is a never-ending decimal. It will go on and on and on and on and on. So we use these approximations, that's what this little squiggly means here, to be able to fill in our equation and solve for circumference. So we're going to say that circumference is equal to pi times diameter. We're going to use 3.14 for pi, and actually we don't have diameter here, we have radius. So let's use 2 pi r, excuse me guys, 2 pi r. Remember, use the information that you're given. So here, instead of multiplying 3.14, we got to multiply 2 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 8.2 meters. If you put all of this on your calculator, you will see that the circumference here would be equal to 51 and 496 thousandths of a meter. So there would be our circumference for if the radius is equal to 8.2 meters. The next one is going to be diameter is equal to 8.2 meters. What would the circumference be? So we'll look at our circumference formulas. Here we have pi times d. Let's use that one. Circumference is equal to pi times diameter, which is going to be equal to 3.14 times 8.2. On your calculator, you will see that this one gives us 25 and 42 hundredths meters. Hopefully you're following along, and I'm not moving too fast. Let's go over area next. There is one formula for area. Area of a circle, area is equal to pi r squared. Now, I said there's only one formula for area, but if we only knew the radius, we can use this formula. If we know the diameter, we're going to see how we can use this formula to help us find area. So let's see. Area is equal to pi r squared. I'm going to use again my pi to be approximately 3.14. So I will now multiply 3.14 times the radius, 8.2 meters, and we're going to have to square the 8.2 meters. So first on your calculator, you want to do 8.2 squared, then multiply by 3.14, and you should get 211 1,336 10,000ths meter. And now we're talking about area. Remember, it's the number of square units that can fit inside the circle. So this is going to be meters squared. Always when you're finding area, your unit will be squared. Next one is if the diameter is equal to 8.2 meters. Well, our formula is only for radius. So again, remember that radius is going to be equal to half the diameter. So we could take 1/2 of 8.2 or divide 8.2 by 2 to get 4.1 meters. Now we can use the same formula. Area is equal to pi r squared. We can replace pi with 3.14, our radius with 4.1. On our calculator, we will square 4.1 or multiply 4.1 times 4.1. Then we must multiply that by 3.14, and you should get 52 and 7,834 meters squared. Again, area is always going to have a square unit when you finally get your answer. And that is because we're multiplying, we're squaring our radius, so we're squaring meters. So now we're multiplying meters by meters. And instead of writing this is 52 and 7,834 meters, we just say it's meters squared. Lastly, we are going to talk about rounding and place value. So a lot of you still struggle with rounding and place value. So the rule is if it's 5 or above, round up, or we say in class 5 and above, give it a shove, because it's going to go on to the next number, the next highest number. If it's 4 and below, you want to stay low, you want to round down, you don't want to, actually round down wouldn't be a good thing, you want to stay, because if we round down, that might think that you want to go to the next number underneath, but we would just stay at that number that we're at. So according to place value, here is my decimal. So on the left side of our decimal are the whole numbers. If we have a number 7, this would be 7 ones. If we have a 17, we know that the 1 is now in the tens place. On the decimal, we don't have a ones place. We start out with the tenths place. Now I'm saying tenths with a THS at the end. That represents the decimal portion of the number. So after the tenths place, we would have the hundredths. And finally, we would have the thousandths. Now this goes on, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, millionths, 10 millionths, 100 millionths, so on and so forth, but always with the THS at the end. So this example is asking us to round 3 and 489 thousandths to the nearest tenth. So I have to go to my 10th spot. The 10th spot is the first place to the right of the decimal. Now I look at this number. This number is a 4. Now in order to be able to round to the 10th place, I have to look at this number after it. Now this number after the 4 says that this is going to be 8. So 5 and above, we give it a shove. We need to round up to the next number. So this changes our 3.489 to be about 3.5. Now if this was rounded to the nearest hundredth, we would have to look at the hundredth place, the 8. Next to the 8 is a 9. Now the 9 says go up. So we would round that to the nearest hundredth to be 3.49. And you should be able to remember this. This is really, really important, guys. You should definitely try to remember the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths place. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and now we're going to get to some work in class. Talk to y'all later.